Let me just ask you something. When you hear that word money, what do you actually feel?
Is it a feeling of security?
Or maybe a sense of freedom? Or does it bring up a knot of stress, that constant pressure? You know, most of us learn to think of money as just a tool, something neutral, practical, and, well, necessary. It's how we get food, pay our bills. Pretty simple, right? But what if it's not really that simple? What if money isn't this innocent tool we think it is? What if, over hundreds of years, it's been quietly changing the very way we trust each other, the way we obey, and what we decide is valuable? Let's get into that story, because it's probably a bit darker than we like to think. To really get what money does to us, we have to go back, way back, to a time before it even existed. For most of human history, we lived in these small, tight-knit communities.
And in that world, everything was built on relationships. If you helped your neighbor fix their roof, you just trusted they'd be there for you when you needed help. Trust was personal. You knew their face, you knew their family, you knew their name. It was this whole web of promises and debts between people who actually knew one another.
But a system like that, well, it has its limits. It really only works when everyone knows everyone. As our societies got bigger and more complicated, that personal trust started to fall apart. I mean, how do you trade with a total stranger you're probably never going to see again? That was the problem money was invented to solve. And this is a really important point. Money wasn't invented to create wealth. It was invented to solve a problem with trust. So in a way, you could say it was born out of distrust. And this created a massive shift in how we operated. We went from trusting people, their word, their reputation, to trusting impersonal objects, a coin, a symbol, a number. That little coin in your hand was basically saying, hey, you don't need to know this guy. You don't have to trust him. Just trust me. And honestly, it worked like a charm. This new kind of impersonal trust let empires get huge. It fueled giant markets. People who didn't share a language or a culture could suddenly trade with each other. But while it was connecting all these strangers, something really fundamental about how we relate to each other was quietly starting to change. And as time went on and money became more and more central to our lives, trust got even more distant. It wasn't even about the physical objects anymore. It moved into these huge abstract systems. We started putting our trust in banks, in governments, in big institutions that set the rules. Think about it. You don't really trust the person you're buying from online anymore, do you? You trust that your credit card company has your back, or that the legal system will sort it out if something goes wrong. This made everything incredibly efficient, but that efficiency came with a hidden cost. Because when trust becomes abstract, so does our sense of personal responsibility. So when something bad happens way down a long supply chain, no one person really feels accountable. And that's when you start hearing phrases like, it's just business, or, hey, I was just following the rules of the system. Money didn't just help us trade. It created this buffer, this distance from the moral weight of our own actions. And this is where the story starts to get even more personal, maybe a little uncomfortable. Because it turns out money doesn't just change our societies on the outside. It actually changes our minds on the inside. There's a whole lot of research now that shows that even just thinking about money can change how we act. It tends to make us more individualistic. We become less likely to help someone out. It can literally reduce our empathy and even make us more okay with inequality. So here's the kicker. Money doesn't just measure value, it actively teaches us what we should value. All of a sudden, time becomes money. Our attention becomes a currency. Our entire way of thinking starts to shift. We slowly stop asking ourselves, is this the right thing to do? And we start asking, is this worth it? Even our friendships, our relationships can start to feel, well, transactional. And that's why money is never, ever truly neutral. It's an amplifier. Whatever values a society already has, whether it's cooperation or competition, kindness or greed, money just turns up the volume. It concentrates power. It scales influence. One person can only talk to so many people face to face, but money can persuade millions. It decides whose voice gets amplified and whose ideas get to spread. We love to say that money equals freedom. And sure, in a lot of ways it does. But there's a paradox here. The more our lives revolve around getting and spending money, the more our choices are actually shaped by it. Our careers, our big life decisions, our dreams, they all get past this one filter. We stop asking, what do I truly want to do? And we learn to ask ourselves a different question.
What can I afford to want? And that is a very subtle but very powerful kind of control.
So, after hearing all this, is money the bad guy in this story? Not really. This isn't about blaming money itself. It's about finally understanding what it actually is.
Money is what you might call a shared fiction. It's a story we've all agreed to believe in. That piece of paper or that number on a screen has zero value on its own. It's only powerful because we all agree that it is. And just like any powerful story, it can be used for good or it can be followed blindly. The real danger isn't the money itself. It's when we forget that it's just a story and we start treating it like it's the ultimate measure of our worth as human beings.
So, the next time you're thinking about money, I want to leave you with a different kind of question. Don't just ask how you can get more of it. Instead, take a second and ask what it's asking from you in return. Is it asking for your time? For your deepest values? Is it demanding all of your finite attention?
Because the real story of money, when you get right down to it, isn't really about economics at all. It's about how this one simple tool ended up changing everything. How we trust, how we relate to one another, and ultimately, how we see ourselves. And that is a story worth understanding.